Welcome back. If you aren't already following Naked, please take a minute to do so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Each follow means so much and it actually helps a lot. If you have more than just a minute, it would be absolutely incredible if you could leave a review and maybe even share an episode with a friend. I am relatively new to the pod world, especially new to the things that are important in the podcasting world. And apparently reviews and follows are up there on the list of importance. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Welcome to Naked, where stories unfold. I'm your host, Janelle, a once former pastor's wife who exchanged small town living for a nomadic life. The unexpected change in our life led my husband and our 4 kids to traveling the world. From years of being rooted in our small town to the thrill of wandering the world, our story has been anything but ordinary. On our journeys, we've met amazing people, learned their way of life, and heard their unique stories, which has led me to understand the profound impact of shared experiences. In each episode, we explore moments of transformation, guided by one single question: is there a time in your life when everything changed? We invite ordinary storytellers like yourself to share the often unexpected turns in life. So grab a seat and settle in. This is the Naked Podcast. This morning, I'm reminded that showing up to do the thing because it's calling me is enough. I started Naked over 3 years ago after having tea and cake with my grandma. She was sharing stories of her life. I didn't realize until then that we had lived through so many similarities. Both of us were once young moms who felt the grief of losing a baby. This woman connected us, built a bridge between us that I never knew needed to be there. We laughed and cried a little as we shared moments in time. At the end of our conversation, it was decided there should be a place for ordinary people to share their stories, a place for people to connect, to feel less alone. She told me I could do it, so I did. I was excited, I posted a few, and then I lost my momentum. I questioned my capability in even doing this. I mean, I'm in full swing perimenopause, and sometimes my brain fog catches me in mid-sentence with my kids. The question of how will I keep a conversation flowing if I hit a brain fog and can't quickly find my way out of it? And honestly, who do I think I am? Just a girl from a small town in Martinsville, Saskatchewan? Will anyone even listen? These thoughts swirled around in my head until I completely lost my momentum. And then some really heavy things happened in my life that needed my full attention. So Naked was put on hold for a long, long time. There were many seasons when I wondered if I'd ever pick it up again. But the idea just wouldn't leave me. So I put all those questions aside and launched season 2 with a conversation I had with my grandma, the woman who has taught me to always leave room for giggles and never take myself too seriously. I feel this more than ever this morning. It's all a bit raw because yesterday I got a call that my sweet grandma, who I love and adore, had suddenly passed away. All the moments of her flooded my mind. The way she sang, her angelic voice, her sweet kisses, and how she continued to play piano throughout her entire life. Her contagious giggles and lighthearted approach to living. Her faith and devote and love for God. Her never-ending crafting days, and also her subtle nudge to start this podcast. She told me to never stop learning, so I'm doing just that. Continue learning to trust my heart, even when the questions and doubts are noisy. Over the past few months, I've been pulling up conversations we recorded when Naked first started, and slowly adding them into the queue. It's been nearly 2 years since I recorded today's episode, and as I recently listened to this recording, I was yet again astonished by Elaine's story. We met when our boys were toddlers, and we were just beginning our 20s. Life was full of learning on how to be a mom. We were acquaintances who saw each other on occasional birthday parties, a night when we'd escape our mom worlds and just enjoy some adult conversation. Life evolved, and as it did, our worlds moved farther apart, which meant we didn't see each other anymore, but thanks to Instagram, we caught snippets of each other's lives, and from time to time, we'd catch up in our DMs. She had become a personal trainer and was in the middle of growing her business and empowering women to love who they are. I was traveling the world and continually admiring what she was doing. Her passion for helping women of all ages reach a healthier, stronger version of themselves was so encouraging. It inspired me to start my trek towards a healthier me. And then, all of a sudden, the world stopped. Everything came to a screeching halt. The pandemic hit. Like we all know, our lives changed and what we knew was completely different. So many of us felt lonely and isolated and a bit lost. It was about midway through the pandemic when we connected again, but this time it was more intentional. We started a monthly Zoom hang. Her and I and a few other friends connected on life, business, marriage, kids. We really just talked about everything. During the time when no one could hang out, we had this little space in the world where we could connect. I always knew that I loved Elaine. Her heart was so soft and kind. She was the woman in the room that emanated this calmness. She's kind with her words, and I always felt like she saw everyone in the room. During these Zoom hangs, I really got to know her in a way I'd never known. Our conversations led to the first time we met nearly 2 decades ago. I had no idea that when I first met her, she was actually going through very traumatic family stuff, which she so beautifully talks about in our conversation. She is completely transparent, open, and oozes love as she talks about a time in her life when everything changed. It reminded me again that sharing our stories is valuable and so needed, bringing me back to why Naked was started in the first place. I soaked up her words and was reminded how important it is to truly see people and not hold resentment and anger. She says it perfectly in our chat today. If you walk in another person's shoes, you will judge them less because you will see the whole picture. Her story is about loss, healing, boundaries, motherhood, and love. I am so grateful for the space that you are here joining us today. If you enjoy this episode or any other episodes, please let us know by leaving a comment. It means so much to hear how Naked is impacting you, what you've taken from an episode, or maybe you've just felt less alone in your own story. Whatever it is, we would love to know that you are here. Thank you so much. Sending you a big hug today.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out and doing this with me today. I am so delighted. I'm glad we can be here. It's been a while for us to try to find our timelines, but I'm so glad we got to do this. Elaine is a dear friend of mine that we met when we had little kids, and our lives were just kind of like bustling. I feel like we never actually got to connect other than like hanging out with a bunch of women. I think like is kind of where we kind of saw each other. And then the pandemic is when we really started to connect again. Kind of saw each other's lives a bit on Instagram, but then really connected on a more intentional basis through the pandemic. And I love like what you do and the work that you do and how you teach people to like not only move their bodies, but love their bodies. So yeah, I'm always inspired by you and just like so happy that we could be here today and have this chat.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I found a picture of one of my birthdays. I don't know if you remember this. I think early, and you were there. I'll have to send you the picture, but yeah, we've known each other for like a long time. Long time.
Yeah. I do recall that birthday. I actually I have somewhat of a picture from that night too. And I think our boys that are, Mikkel, I think at the time was just a baby and now he's 18. So it has to have been like 15 years ago or so that we kind of like connected, but then really connected over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm so glad we could be here. Thanks for creating space for this. And thanks for being willing to share your story, whatever parts come out. Like I always feel a deep sense of gratitude.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm hoping that, I can just be authentic and share what comes up, I guess. Yeah. My journey.
Yeah. So as you probably heard, like in some of the previous podcasts, I only ask really one question because I feel like life, we could ask a lot of questions, but really there are so many things in our life that are constantly changing and some that really stand out really like remarkably that they changed everything. And so the main question with Naked is like, was there a time in your life when everything changed? And I think like, that's a big question, kind of loaded, because there's lots of times when things change, children change our lives. And maybe that's it. But I just, I think start wherever you kind of feel like, this moment changed everything and let it kind of spiral from there and see what comes. Because I think that it'll be amazing.
It's funny because I was thinking about this earlier. And I think anyone who's ever lived, obviously everyone's lived a life, but lived through things, it's almost like you can do a timeline of your life and write several of those kind of moments that kind of changed everything. So to go back and pick one, I do have one, but it was hard because, I feel like I've lived 1,000 lives in a way. And like, if that sounds weird. And sometimes I think one day I'll write a book about it because I actually have a lot of really crazy stories. It's just that a lot of those stories, and I'm sure everyone can relate, you can't really, how do I say this? If you were really open and honest about every single story that you've ever been through, it touches a lot of people. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some things
Yeah.
that oh my gosh, I can't say that yet. But if I could go back and think about the one thing where everything changed, would have been when my mother left our family, I would say. So little background story. I was raised in a very like Christian home, lovely parents, always felt loved, always, I always felt loved. My parents did the best that they could with what they had. My mom, who I love dearly, but she's always had a lot of issues. She was raised more, she was adopted later in her life and raised by older parents who, in that time, I'm sure they loved her, but they never really loved her. That makes sense. They're very harsh disciplinarians. And so she was raised by parents who were in their 50s, who had never really had their own children, who adopted this baby who was a toddler, and she was supposed to be seen and not heard, never told I love you, really like what would be considered like extreme abuse nowadays. And so, you know, you put that into a person, into an adult, and then that adult, you know, grows up with all that hurt. What do? They do the best that they can, you know, raising kids. And so, you know, like throughout my childhood, I mean, you just know your own life, like things that go on in your world, in your home are normal to you because you don't know any different. And then as you grow up and you learn different things and you learn like, maybe that's not as normal. Maybe the way my mom treats my siblings and I isn't normal. I don't believe she meant to hurt or meant to be, I will use the word abusive. I don't think she meant to do that, but she just did what she knew, right? And
totally.
later in our life, like we were, like I said, a Christian home. We were raised very strict, taught, you know, certain values and really stringent rules. And then, you know, I'm an adult at this moment, but a young adult. My mom leaves our family, and it just sort of like that episode. Sorry. See, I was like, I'm not going to cry today. It threw a bomb in my beliefs. That makes sense. Because, you know, you're taught a certain way, and then your mom just abandons. She did it because she didn't know any other way out. She didn't have any other tools. But in the wake of that, she really left a lot of hurt. And today, today, you know, she has no relationship with my brother or sister at all. I've tried to have a relationship with her, but it's very difficult. So I think that moment shook a lot up. It shook up my beliefs. It shook up the things that I think I stood for. Were they real? Like, were they my beliefs? Were they just my parents' beliefs in me? And I think like through that next 10 years was really transformative for me in my life, because at the time, big breath, I was pregnant with Isaac. So I was just becoming a mother myself. And so, you know, you bring all these things into becoming a mom. And learning who am I? Like, who am I really? Like, what kind of parent am I going to be? What kind of way am I going to raise my kids? And, you know, without the guidance of my own mother at this point, you know, it was like
Mhm.
a shaky time.
Yeah.
But also, I can't say that I wouldn't change it for the world, because I do wish my mom was a part of my life, but I wouldn't change the growth that happened, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
big breaths. Like,
Wow.
how you
It's like, I think it's normal, Elaine, when we talk about the parts of our lives that oftentimes aren't talked about. You know, that there's like, how often do we sit together and talk about this? Like, this
Yeah.
is the first, you know? And so to really go into the space of like, this is like the part of me that's tucked away that still is impacted who I am today, you know? And so it's soft. And sometimes we feel it in ways that bring emotion, and that's okay, you know? That's a huge shifting moment. Were you, when you're saying, so were you pregnant with her when she left, or were you at home still?
Yeah, so I was pregnant with Isaac. So I had been married.
Okay.
Yeah, my brother
Okay.
was still at home at the time.
Yeah.
And my sister and I had both young married. I was just pregnant with Isaac, my first, when she left.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so, you know, you really need, like, when your kids are adults and then they're starting to have their kids, you know,
Yeah.
you really need that. So
Mm.
I think, like, if you pack in all the things that made me who I was as a person, and the things that we went through growing up, and then, you know, in a way, it's already like, I can't say it wasn't a solid foundation. There are some really good things that was built in me, but
Yeah.
but it really did shake up my foundation. Like, there are a lot of things that I think, now knowing what I know, right? Hindsight's 2020. Now knowing what I know, I'm like, oh, that's why I, you know, had a very untrusting relationship with women. That's why becoming a mom, I felt so insecure in my abilities. Like, that's why, you know, I made certain choices. I think, you know, when you have someone that's supposed to be there, nurturing you, guiding you, and instilling those things into your life, but they're broken themselves,
Yeah.
that they can't build that. So you learn it in other ways, and you do learn it in other ways. And I think that, you know, God gives you people, like, to replace that. I mean, oh my gosh, I have an incredible relationship with my mother-in-law, and she's been like that person that has filled in those gaps, you know? So it's been really good. Holy cow, I need to, whew.
It's all good. It's all good. Wow. I think it is true. Like, when something, yeah, when you have a devastation of some sort of your life, there is people, especially like felt like you probably lost your mom. It sounds like it was a very, I don't know if was it a severing kind of thing where she was completely out of your life kind of a thing?
Yeah. So
there's
originally she left, and we couldn't find her for a couple, well, I would say for almost 2 years. And then I did find her. And I think ever since then, it's been sort of like a cycle where I try, you know, we try and get close to her. I try to bring her in. The thing is, I know my mom means well, and I know she doesn't want to cause hurt, but I don't know if she knows another way. And so for me to get my mom to get her and I to get close again, it would be this cycle of getting close, and then she would lash out for whatever reason, and then I would, you know, back away. And it's a very toxic relationship. And unfortunately, she's my mom. So it's not like it's your neighbor who's a toxic person in your life and you can just cut them off. And I'm not saying my mom is a toxic person. What I'm saying is that there's things in her and on my relationship that become toxic because of the damages, right? And so She is someone that I love and I talk to and I can, but I can't, I just can't bring her close. I feel like we've tried that before. And I think maturity, you just learn like, okay, I can love her, I can be there for her, but I have to kind of like, there are boundaries there. And that's healthy right now for me. And hopefully for her as well. She probably would disagree with that. But yeah, she did kind of, sorry to answer your question. She did disappear, but I do know where she is. I know, I could reach out now, and I do once in a while, but yeah, I can't. Wow. I would love, like, every girl has that. Everyone wants that close relationship with their mom. I would love that. I think I've let go of that dream of what it could be. And I think I know now it's like that's a dream. And I need to just accept that for what it is and love her for who she is now and for what the relationship can be, really,
Yeah. Like coming to grips with that, knowing that like the mom that you envisioned, like having your first child and having her nurture and like, help you through the breastfeeding, the things that like are just natural, normal mom things that you're going to go through. That's like your mom's like, oh, that's normal and that's okay. Or like the meals and those things, but not only for her to be not that person, but for her to be completely absent in your life, like gone out of the picture, not for 2 years, like that. I can't imagine like the turmoil, even wondering like where she is and what she's doing. And you've got this baby and like, there's so many hormones that come with just having a child and shifting in how we feel, never mind the loss of like your mom.
Yeah. But, I'm just like, I think through that though, I'm learning how to like love her differently and see her for who she is. And, like I said, God gives you people that not that my mom's replaced, but I get that in other ways and through different friendships and
Right. Yeah. And you just learn to hold a relationship differently with her, expecting different. Yeah.
And I think like the hope I held for so long, like it's just, I still hope, I still believe that there can be, healing there. But I know now that it's just going to be different. Like it's not going to be what I get to have with my daughter. So, and that's the really cool redemption in this, is because, I don't have to be the way that my mom was. I get to be a different mom to my daughter, and I am a different mom to my daughter. And so the cool thing is I guess I get to break that cycle, right? So that's that's a place to be in.
Yeah, totally. Like you get to, the envisionment that you had for your relationship with your mom, you get to like create that with your kids, and in some ways probably understand the importance of the relationship in ways that some of us might not get, about the little things, like being there for your children when your child has a baby, or being there for these little things, or even growing up, like you said, it was, there was some abusive patterns and things that were happening in your growing up years, and even to just be aware of that as a mom, I'm sure your senses were heightened, and aware of that in ways that some people may overlook because you've lived it and you understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah. It's interesting though. I do find that sometimes I catch myself. I think anyone who's grown up in sort of that kind of environment, the pendulum can swing really far the other way. And I see myself with my kids. Sometimes I'm so the opposite, that I'm like, they just walk all over me. And then, it brings up but I see that now and I know how to bring it back in. But it's interesting how, when when you've gone through that, how you can just like almost become an opposite. And that's not always a good thing either. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a natural thing. Exactly what you said. Like you tend to swing to the side because it's the farthest mark from where you want to be, kind of thing. And then somehow with parenting, like, your daughter's still younger and coming into her teens, and so with that you'll probably like find, I mean, your boys are older, but girls are different than our boys, we know. And the relationship and all of the needs, like you'll find your way as she gets older, and yeah. And I think parenting is always shifting, right? Like, I mean, I've been a parent for 20 years. It's mind-blowing how much every year it's something different. Like, people are like, I just need to get my kids into school and everything is going to be so great. And then your kids are in school and you're like in a whole new stage. And sometimes with kids, it's like month by month, you're like, oh, I'm just learning how to be a parent to this form of my child now. And then it's just,
oh man, that's the truth, right? Like, you think you've got it, and then they grow and they change and they become a tween, and then you're like, I don't have this at all. And then they become a teenager. Same thing again. It's like you're learning how to parent every year this new kid who's growing and changing. And oh my gosh, I know. And you know what? I have a lot of really great things from my mom, really great things from my dad. Like, I can't say that there was all bad in my childhood. I had a great childhood. But the fear of when I had my boys, it was different. I was like, I got this. Like, I was a tomboy. I can do boys easy. And that's really, I just took it and ran with it. When I had my daughter, I think I was so terrified. I was so terrified because there was a little part of me that just assumed that I would just become a lot of what my mom was, or have that dynamic with my daughter. My mom just had a lot of fears and would often, be more the child than the parent. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. And my mother-in-law said to me one day, she's like, you're Elaine. You are not your mom. Your mom is loved, but you are not your mom. And you can take the good things and you can choose to not have the bad things. And I was like, that alone was so much freedom. And I mean, really, it's how I have to like remind myself every day, like I am different, and my daughter is going to be my friend as long as I can get her through this. Hopefully.
Yes, totally. You're paving your own path, realizing that your mom had her path, and though she maybe wasn't always the right path, and you can see that and go like, and I think a lot of parenting is you're weed whacking your way through unknown paths, because every kid requires a different type of parenting too. Like, they're just different. They don't, like, some respond to this while the other one would not respond to that. And so it's like, and as she's growing and changing, it's finding like, how do you weed whack your way through this unwalked path?
Yeah. It's a landmine. It's a beautiful landmine.
It is.
Right.
And I mean, I'm so glad you have your mother-in-law, because I think that we need those people in our lives to like to support us with the questions and the times when we don't know if we question if we're doing it right, and like how we screwed things up, like the things that hit our minds when it's like, I think I'm ruining this child, and then there's somebody who's like, no, like, I've been there too. And I'm to have that like those arms and the voice of encouragement to guide you through a path that feels like it could have been a lot different not having that support.
And I think too, like, it would have been nice if my mom had that. Back in the day, you didn't talk about your struggles. You hid them. You had to be someone who dealt with things in private, and it came out, in public. And I think what's different for us is we, like what you just said, we have the ability to be a little bit more open with our struggles and and pick and choose, but like have our friends that can relate and help us and walk with us through those things. And, you know, whether it be my mother-in-law or you, like, I know so many of my girlfriends have kind of raised me as well, right? Just like, I'm sure you can relate, because
Totally.
it's just different nowadays. Not that you share everything with everyone, but you can get, you know, you can really get nurtured through those connections and friendships in different ways. And it's really sad that unfortunately our parents didn't really have quite the same world as what we have now.
Well, easier to connect.
Yeah.
And I think people are a lot more open to vulnerability and honesty. And that's part of like what this space is to realize that I think people are in a space where we realize that it's the authenticity of somebody sharing their story that reminds us that we're not alone, you know, that somebody else has come through this darkness and they made it. Like they're okay. They're doing well and they're thriving. Where I think sometimes, and you've been speaking to my mom about, you know, things like menopause, there wasn't a communication about that. It was just very hidden. And women felt like something was really wrong with them, where we're in this other space where there's a lot more community around, you know, grief, around loss, around the joys, around the questions, that we don't feel so alone in it. And yeah, and that's changed a lot even since you had your son, you know, like what's available to us.
So
And
well, even
so,
mental health, being able to talk about mental health as well. Like that is not as stigmatized as it used to be. So
no,
good thing.
Yeah, it's not a shame. Like I feel like people are becoming much more open to be like, oh, and me too. Like, yeah, I felt that too. So when you think back about your mom leaving and going into this transitional season for yourself with the son and all those kind of things, if you were talking to somebody who was sitting in a similar seat, whether their mom, like, you know, passed or whether mom had a similar situation, what would be the one thing that you felt like helped you get through that helped you not like how you started, Elaine? You have such a deep amount of grace and kindness and love that I can like, that it's very easy to see and feel, though it wasn't easy growing up and what you went through, your mom wasn't easy. You still have such a kindness about you. And I think that sometimes is the hardest thing in our bits of our grief and in our pain, is that it's easy to become bitter and anger. And that's not necessarily wrong, but we can stay in that state for a lifetime, which is really not, it's not good for us, you know. So I'm interested to know, like, how did you come through that? Because you speak with such kindness.
Because I know that part of the reason my mom couldn't really grow past her problems was because of the hurt and the anger and the bitterness that took root in her life. And so I've seen how that unforgiveness and that bitterness can really destroy someone, and from the inside out. Like it's almost like I sat and got to observe this. And, you know, not that I'm such a person that's so willing to forgive. It's been a long journey, and I have like been in counseling a lot, but I think you learn how to separate. Like I learned how to separate myself from the humanity of what my mom, like the humanity of what she's been through, and watching that anger and bitterness take root. I know I can't be that person. I'm like, I refuse. And that's part of breaking that cycle. I refuse. Not that you can't get angry. You can get angry at the things that weren't right. You can get angry at the things that you feel robbed in your life from. But to take that anger and to make it constructive and like do something good with it, like change the way that I look at my mom. And instead of, you know, having resentment, I actually look at her as a little girl who was deeply hurt and disturbed and didn't know any different. And so I have a lot of compassion for her. I also have a lot of boundaries because I have my own family to protect, but I do see her as this broken little girl. And actually, I think that there's a lot of people in this world who walk around with that broken little kid in them. And a lot of the things that they do that cause hurt in other people is that inside of them. Does that make sense? Like if some girlfriend were to lash out and hurt you, it hurts, it stings. You want to get defensive and angry, but also like to step back and go, what made you want to do that? What made you want to hurt someone? And it's almost 100% of the time that scared little girl on the inside of them. And so when you can take that perspective, it kind of changes the way you view these kind of situations. There's that saying, if you walked a day, what is it? If you walked in another person's shoes, you would judge them less because you would see the whole picture. And see, we don't see the whole picture in a lot of people's lives. We just see the trauma or the big thing. We don't see everything that made them who they are and how they got there. So I think that's not that that's always easy. That's also been a journey. And like I said, I did lots of counseling and I, not that today, if I, had a great talk with my mom and then the next day we have there's a stinging comment or an argument, then, I'm still upset like any other human being, but yeah, it's just been a journey.
That's a really go ahead.
No, go on.
I was just gonna say that's a really beautiful way of looking at it, like being like, I see, like you see the child inside your mom, and so you look past like this outer part of her body that like there was the figure that did hurt you, and you see the child inside that was like also hurt, and realize that she's still very much alive, and that's why she still hurts, because hurt people, if not undealt with, hurt people.
Yeah.
And not only like always knowingly, like you said in the beginning, like I don't believe she actually like that was her purpose, and that was like what she was setting out to do. It was just, it's what she knew. She did the best with what she was given, and like you said, like not dealing with her own pain. It sounds as though you're almost able to see this like the flourishing, like the blossom of like this mom who had this pain that it took all of her. In a sense, and she became what she was around as a child, and you saw the bitterness play out, which has become like an awareness, it seems like, to you, to not hold the anger, the bitter.
I think it's empowering too when you can understand that the things that we don't deal with from past wounds and hurts, they will keep surfacing. Right. And so when we don't deal with something, we can't really grow past that. And so I see a lot of things in my mom, that she couldn't deal with and still can't deal with. And so she can't really get past or grow past that. So I feel empowered in the sense that I need to deal with the stuff in my own life, because I don't want to be the person who's stuck, right, as a 16-year-old making, in a 60-year-old body, making these irrational choices. Like we get to grow and evolve and learn from our mistakes and learn from our hurts. And sometimes it takes reaching out and getting help to do that, but if you don't deal with these things, they can always keep coming up. And another thing I just have to say is I don't see myself like I am not, like I said before, I am not her. She is her own person and she makes her own choices. And I have to release that and just not take everything as personal. Yeah.
Wow. That's like, I feel like that's such a light, like a very light switch moment, I think, for many of us. Sorry, this lighting is all over the place here. Yeah, just like, I think that's something that many of us overlook, that we have this we hold on to things, and then it manifests in us. It comes out in some, it might not look exactly the same, but it will somehow show up. Like you said, you don't want to be the 16-year-old girl trapped in a 60-year-old body being like, I'm dealing with some of the same things that I didn't even know existed, that were there, and they just show up. It sounds like you've been so like hit it head on, which I think many of us can shy away from until we realize like, oh my gosh, like this has changed me. This has really affected me. But it's like, you've gone to the counseling, you've realized that like part of the patterns is to not hold the anger, to not hold the bitterness, so that you don't, you don't have it manifest another way, because it's come out for your mom that way.
I've also hit a lot of like boulders, if that makes sense. I've done a lot of stupid things and learned a lot of things the hard way. So I think like when you go through things, you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have made that choice. Like that was really, so that brings it up too, right? When you learn things the hard way, unfortunately. But
yeah. But but the thing is, it's one thing to know, to hit it and feel it. It's not a thing to learn through it and go like, hell no, like I'm not going there, like to actually do something with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes we can tuck or bury our pain so much that we don't ever actually be like, okay, no, I'm going to learn how to come through this. Because otherwise it shows up. It shows up and you end up leaving, not, but for your mom, like it was a pivotal point for her.
Yeah. And pain is pain. Like when you bring it up and you face it and you go through it and you deal with it, no one likes to do that. That's like it is a pain, like literally a painful process. It really sucks.
Yeah.
And it's kind of no different than grief, right? Because if you've ever lost someone and you go through that grieving process, you have no choice but to go through it, right?
Yeah.
It's very similar to that. Like if you hit those like painful points and you go back and you deal with them, you actually work through them and face your emotion and feel all the really shitty things that you're supposed to feel. You can come out of that way stronger and with so much more perspective. Like and it becomes like that wound becomes a strength where you can then help someone else, or it'll also prevent you from doing a dumb thing. Hopefully we get smarter. I don't know.
Yeah. Learning from it and seeing it. It's like such a, I think that what your story and how you walk through it is not just specific to like, the loss of a parent, but also like specific to life. And when you've really worked through things and you've allowed things to settle in you to taint who you are, but that Elaine, the best version of Elaine, gets to exist and live and be a part of your kid's life in a way that is, the best version, because you've done the hard work. It's sometimes hard to do the hard work.
And sometimes we're forced to do the hard work, right? Like, I think too, like even in my own life, like a lot of those hurts I didn't deal with that came up later in my marriage with my husband, and man, like walking through that whole journey. And then, like realizing the root of that was things that I hadn't dealt with, and, like having it affect my marriage, and then realize like walking through all of that, man, you learn a lot of things sometimes in the ways that you don't want to learn them. But we do eventually learn, hopefully.
Yeah. I think if we're open, like it sounds like you it's not like you're, someone just wants to explain like pain in the sense of, especially in a relational pain. It's like, you have a scar and you see that scar and you recognize that scar. You don't feel the pain 20 years later. But if that's if in a relationship, it's like with your mom, the scar, you feel the scar, still has its bevels on it. You still know it exists. And you're not because of the way the relationship is, you're not walking into that, continuing to have more scars. So it's creating these beautiful boundaries, that you're not putting yourself in the same situation, like you're protecting your family, the relationship with your mom and how it can be. So it's not that you can't have a relationship, but it's one with boundaries.
Mhm.
One that is healthy and doable for you as a whole being, as well as your family. And knowing that, like, knowing the importance of it, I guess. But I
Mhm.
think lots of us, again, we just we don't realize. And so it's all or nothing,
Yeah.
sometimes we have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it
So,
comes down to learning, like, really self-love in a way, how to have compassion
mhm,
for ourselves and know that we're still human ourselves, and we're going to mess up no matter how much work we do on on ourselves. No matter how we
yeah.
try to get it right, we're still going to make mistakes. And instead of, I know in the past I have, like, kind of faltered to shame and,
Mm,
self-loathing, and that helps no one. um so to get yourself out of that shame and get into, like, a place of, like, having some compassion even for yourself, that'll help.
mhm,
Like, I know
mhm,
that
mhm.
that's easier said than done, though.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is, but it's like you said, like over your course of it's been years. Like it's a part of, like, the onion, you're like, over the course of time, you learn to peel back another layer and work through that part. And with
Yeah.
maturity and growth and all of that comes the knowledge too,
Yeah.
understanding of, like, what you can give. And
Mhm.
when you say, when you say yes to something, you say no to something, and in reverse. So what are you saying yes to protect, that you're also, in the other end saying, no, that's okay. Like, yes to this protecting my family, and no to, like, allowing the boundaries to just fall because I'm trying to, create something or appease somebody, um, to remove the shame or whatever is the layer.
That
Yeah.
transformation is such a beautiful process, really. Because if all of us
Hmm.
look back at, like, our lives as a whole, when did we change the most, or what moments in our lives were the most transformative? Unfortunately, they're probably the hardest moments of our lives. And when we were
Hmm.
going through them, they were awful. We didn't like we didn't want to be there. They were probably the worst to walk through. But when you
Yeah.
come out the other side and you're like, oh my gosh, I survived, I learned this, it made you better and stronger,
Hmm.
wiser, and, like, more, hopefully more compassionate. It could make you more bitter, but, hopefully someone who, like, gives love, and not holds it back. And you have that
Hmm.
opportunity, right?
Yeah, 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 totally. So if you were sitting with somebody who was going through something similar to you in this, journey of life that you've gone through, what would be the one thing that you would tell her?
I would say, I see you. It's not your fault, right? Um, and I would say, you you are not to blame. And um, what am I trying to say? You're not to blame, and this person is hurt, and that's why they're hurting you.
Mhm,
So it's easy to take this personal, and you can feel all the feels. You can feel the betrayal and the hurt. But at the end of the day, it actually isn't about you. It's about them and their hurt, and they shouldn't be doing that to you. It's wrong, but it's not about you. So you don't have to carry that. Like, you can release yourself from the blame. And I don't know, that's, I guess, what I would say. And I'd also say, in time, find it in your heart to love them, right?
mhm,
Love
mhm,
them as best as you can love them, but you don't have
mhm.
to let them have a full access into your life. Like, it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to say no. It's okay to protect when you know that this is my safe place. Like, I will love you, but this is my safe place, and you can stay there, and that's okay. So, and not
Mm.
feel bad about that. Hmm.
That's amazing. I think that is very valuable, and I think a lot of times we don't know what our next step is, and I think that's a beautiful next step. Like,
Hmm.
remove that like it was your fault, and
Hmm.
that you see. Yeah.
And
Thank
I
you.
don't, I'll add one more thing though, because I actually
Yeah.
I talk to my clients all the time about this, especially women. We always take care of everyone else first, right?
Mhm.
I would
Mhm.
also say, put your own oxygen mask on. Like, do what you need to do to get your heart in an okay, safe place, and your life in a place where you feel good again. And then
Yeah.
you can start to work on that relationship, or, like cast your net. Then you can, but you do need to work. You do need to stand up for yourself in that moment first before you can be of use around you. So,
Wow.
which is not really,
That's
our parents never did that, right? And it's not selfish. It's not, because if I am a damaged mom, I'm damaging my kids. If I can heal, then I can be of better use for my family. I can fully be there. Anyway.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that's overlooked sometimes. It's like, put on your mask first. Like that is not taught to a lot of us. It can look as being selfish, like you said, and that's a great reminder of like, now take care of your own heart, take care of your own mind, and it's not selfish. In fact, you'll be better for everyone in your life by doing that, for doing that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. Just one, I always like to ask like something that just comes to me at the end. And so I guess a question I'm thinking about all of this, what is one thing in life that you find yourself being like brings you a sense of joy or gratitude in your life today? Doesn't have to be anything today, but in your life in general, what's the one thing that brings you a sense of joy? Like you joy fitness, so like, which I love. But like, yeah, what fills you up? What is your joy at this season?
Well, there's a couple things that bring me joy. One, when I can cook for people, that brings me joy. Of course, I love training my clients. But another thing that really brings me joy is just getting out and going for a walk with my dog in nature without any sound, like just being quiet and present. I find for me anyways, when like life can be so busy, and so those quiet moments are so soul filling and almost life-giving for me. So I would say like, yeah, those are the things that bring me joy, of being with my family.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank
you for doing this. Honestly, I think it means so much that people would come to a space and share some of the like more raw parts of our life, to remind people that, like you said, I see you, and that is incredibly valuable.
Well, thank you for doing this and letting me cry.
You're always welcome. No, I think it's being human, like you said. It's part of, like some people say, crying is like the opposite of the laughter. It's like the emotion is all welcome.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, thanks for coming and being in this space and sharing the parts that aren't always easy to talk about. We've been knowing each other for 15 years and I didn't know the story. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for allowing people to bring their humanity into the open. I mean, I think that everyone can relate. We are all broken in a sense and perfect on the others, like broken and perfect. That's what makes a human. So thank you.
Beautiful, wonderful. Well, thank you. Yeah. Sending all the love to you from across the world. And yeah, have a beautiful day, and thanks again for sharing the space with us. It's a growing little community over here, so it's good.
It's awesome. Thank you.
All right. So much love. Bye, friend.
Bye.
See you.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcast goodness. This way you'll never miss out on any future episodes, plus it really helps us. And if you want to share your favorite episode with a friend, that would be absolutely incredible. This goes a long way. If you'd like to join Naked by sharing part of your story, just leave us a message on Instagram or email us at nakedwithjanelle@gmail.com. Also, a big thanks to my son, Mikkel, who is the best cheerleader and maybe one of the biggest believers in Naked, and also produces and edits all our podcasts. I am beyond grateful for him and very aware that I couldn't do this on my own. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being here.